6:02, we'll call this regular scheduled meeting of the Hillsborough City Council to order. First item on the agenda is the invocation given by Pastor James Hoskins of the First Methodist Church, Hillsborough, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Father, we thank you for this evening and this time that we have together. Lord, your word says that wisdom calls from the streets and she raises her voice in the square. And I pray that tonight, Father, that we are all listening for the voice of wisdom. We just pray for wisdom in this place as decisions are made. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let's face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is to hear statements from persons wishing to address the council.
We have none.
Hearing none, we'll move along to the consent agenda. Deliberate and act on the approval of the minutes for the special meeting and regular meeting on September 30th, 2024 and October 1st, 2024. Act on the approval of bills. Deliberate and act on a resolution accepting the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission denying a meritorious exception as described in the City of Hillsborough zoning ordinance, section 5.33.8, submitted by Rhett Riddell for property located at 110 East Elm Street. Deliberate and act on a resolution accepting the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission approving a specific use permit for animal grooming at 201 East Franklin Street, which is located in the Central Business District. Animal grooming is only allowed by specific use permit in the Central Business District. Deliberate and act on a resolution to enter into a contract by and between the City of Hillsborough and Government Capital Corporation for the purpose of financing the finance software conversion. Council, any questions about any of those individual agenda items?
Mayor, staff requests that item 9 be omitted from the consent agenda and recommends that no action be taken.
Okay. Item 9 will be omitted. Council, any further questions in regards to items 5 through 8 on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
City Secretary.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Lloyd. Councilmember Zarate. Councilmember Richmond. Councilmember Jolly.
Moving on to the regular agenda. Deliberate and act on a resolution appointing members of various standing boards, commissions, and committees.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's that time of the year again where we appoint our various members to our boards, commissions, and committees. The terms this year expire in September. However, those current members are going to continue to serve until the appointees tonight are able to take their spot. Our liaison, Jessica True, has recommended Michael McDonald, Natasha Sawyer, and Mark Young. For historic preservation, we have John Fitch. Our Housing Finance Corporation, we have Angela Boyd and David Teal. For our Library Board of Trustees, we have Ben Cowan, Charles Eaton, Deanne Dent, and Stephen Smith. Main Street Board, Joe Dennison, Chauncey Frazier, Sherry Henry, and Lacey Whitehouse. For our Parks Advisory Board, we have Patty Donaldson, Jeffrey Eager, Joaquin Escalante, Mona Orbig, and Greg Waller. For Planning and Zoning Commission, we have Richard Fisher, Taylor Minier, Loma Montes, and Christian Thrasher. And then lastly, we have, for our Zoning Board of Adjustments, we have Danny Brown and David Villarreal. The boards that have our current vacancies, for historic preservation, we have 3 vacancies. We have 1 for housing finance and 2 for zoning board of adjustment. Open for any questions.
Council, any questions, for Jasmine regarding the board appointments? Can you go back to the EDC one, please?
Yes, sir.
Jessica, is there one of those missing?
Yes, and I just looked back at the letter that I sent to Jasmine, and that's my fault. Charles Eaton should also be on that list, and so if we could reappoint Mr. Eaton, we would appreciate that.
Council, Eden, Charles Eden will be added to. Council, any further questions? Adam, entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the recommendations. Second.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Lloyd. Councilmember Zarate. Councilmember Richmond. Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you, Judge. Next item on the agenda here, a presentation regarding an update on economic development from Executive Director of Hillsborough Economic Development Corporation, Jessica True.
I'm going to give you just a little bit of an update on what's been going on in the community and economic development over just about the last 6 months now that I've been here. That's tiny, I apologize. So some recent events that we had was Autumn Fest, which happened on September 28th. According to some new software that we've obtained that looks at visit rates, this was so far our highest attended event, getting slightly higher every time. Over the last Trail Fest and the previous Autumn Fest, it listed 2,100 visitors. We saw that there was a peak in that visitation around 2 to 4 p.m. And then another small peak at 9 p.m., which we expect had to do with those headliners that were attending. We also sent out after this event a survey to both the community who attended and also to the vendors that were there, seeking their input, what went well, what didn't, and we got some really great feedback on both accounts, specifically, especially to the vendor process and how we can better facilitate that process happening more efficiently. So we look forward to continuing to upgrade their experience each time. We recently also just had our Halloween event, which, as I understand, was also one of the highest attended as far as the trick-or-treaters that were on Franklin. So we're very grateful to all of the businesses that were participating in that. We also had great participation with our 3 costume contests that happened. We had one for children, one for adults, and one for dogs. So those were all very well participated in, and everyone seemed to enjoy those. For our haunted house that was hosted at the Business Supply Center building with assistance from Rec Riddell, we had just under 300 people go through that event. And so we partnered with the museum to do that. So 256 of those visitors came directly to that haunted house, and then 43 of them came after we went to Louisiana and find that joint at the dive. Upcoming events, Small Business Saturday is coming up November 30th. We're reaching out to businesses to understand how we can support them in a way that is useful to them and that will help them get their business out there on Small Business Saturday and beyond. We put out kind of a questionnaire to them with some suggestions, so we look forward to receiving some information. Stay tuned for some promotion on that in the weeks to come. And then we are already working on the Christmas parade as well. Churro Fest does have a date. It is May 19th of 2025, so you heard it here first. And we have re-engaged Operation Welcome Mat. As y'all may recall, Operation Welcome Mat got together before the eclipse to really make it an inviting entrance to the city as we welcomed guests from very far to participate in our eclipse events. We're looking at more kind of an ongoing participation from those members as far as unified in the city. We had great participation. We had 2 meetings so far. There was a range from teenagers to retired folks. It was really great participation. And our first project that we've begun is to start updating those Christmas letters and decorations that go on the courthouse lawn, so that we're putting our best foot forward for that December event. Last on community development, we are hiring. There should be a job posted later this week for a Main Street manager, so we're really excited to find somebody who will engage with our businesses and really advance our Main Street program. Also awful to look at, I'm sorry. I'm going to test these out on this board because some things that are happening in economic development. There was recently a ribbon cutting for Frontier Support Logistics, who in partnership with Hill College began a truck driving academy to support their growth. Some outbound activity, we have been able to participate in 2 Texas Economic Development Council conferences. That is a group of economic developers throughout the state. Specifically at some of those, we've had the opportunity to meet with Midlothian, Waxahachie, Cleveland, Alvarado, and Waco, all of which regional efforts will definitely be forthcoming with some of those. They're a little further advanced than us as far as development, so certainly lessons learned from them. And then other ones are kind of in the same boat, so having some other people out in the trenches that are seeing our same growth and some of our same challenges with that growth is always helpful. We also attended the Industrial Asset Management Council conference, in which we connected with over 40 end users, so corporate members, as well as service providers, so those that provide them with their site selection services. We participated in a trade show, FabTech, which is in fabrication technologies, alongside our partners with Encore. And through that, we had close to 20 companies that we've designated as leads that we're now following up on. Those are not just people that came to the booth to get a fidget pen or whatever other swag was out there. Those are people that we spoke directly with, the decision makers in those companies, and vetted their interest in Texas. So we'll continue to have those conversations. And then participated in one roadshow with Team Texas. Team Texas is a group that actively works to find companies in other communities, do a roadshow with some of the participating members, and again, gauge their interest to come to Texas in whatever is the best community for them. Our recent roadshow was to Toronto. We've been seeing a lot of interest from Canadian companies looking to get into the U.S. market, and we had the opportunity to meet with 12 companies on that visit. So we have a lot of outbound activity and more inbound. On our inbound activity, we have responded to over 25 requests for information. Those are companies that are coming either through the governor's office, through a consultant, or directly to us, wanting to know if this is a good fit for their relocation or expansion project. As a result of those, we have had 3 site visits, one of which was today. So there is certainly a lot of activity going on, and we look forward to bringing that further along the process. We have been updating our tools so that we have more data and resources at our fingertips. I mentioned Placer AI when I spoke on community development. Again, that's looking at what our traffic is from visitors. I've been using it for demographics, for labor shed maps, etc. So that's been a really great tool to add to the data we can provide to companies that are looking at us. We have also gotten a partnership with EDOIQ. That allows us to have a management system for all of our contacts, our companies, our compliance on existing incentives, all in one place that we can make sure to track those. It will also be able to formalizing our business retention strategy, retention being the most critical part of economic development, and we really want to take care of those that are already here. We've also had an opportunity to have a trial run with Resimplify, so if you go onto the EDC's homepage or webpage, you will see that there is a building and land search tool there that is through them, and they are working with local brokers as well as those at the national level to update that. It gets updated once a week with those that are national brokers on platforms that speak to each other, and then with the local brokers, it gets updated once a month. And last but not least, rebranding. We have updated, we have followed suit with the City of Main Street getting a new logo, and here it is, at least that one shows up clearly. So this is the new logo, and we had the privilege of working with a company that was already familiar with Hillsborough, with their work with the city and Main Street. And through that, they kind of really understood the city's brand, and one word that came to light over and over was connection. Not just on location, but how we connect with each other, how our businesses connect. And so that's a brand that we want to continue to amplify as we look for businesses and residents that live that value.
Jessica, anybody have any questions for Jessica? Moving along to the next agenda item, hold a public hearing, first reading, and deliberate on ordinance accepting the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission to amend the terms of the 2007 zoning ordinance, known as ordinance number O-2007-01-01, whereby the purpose is to amend section 4.30B.4 by amending the height and area regulations pertaining to setback requirements for the OMR Outlet Mall redevelopment overlay district. Richard?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. When the Outlet Mall Overlay District was created, it referenced the area requirements for the light industrial zoning district. And of course, the whole idea behind the overlay is to be flexible with businesses and to create opportunities for businesses. And so, in that effort, the whole idea here would be to create flexibility on setback requirements for the overlay. The light industrial may not fully encompass what those setbacks should be. And so the idea here would be to allow some flexibility for the rear property line for these properties fronting on the service road. And then for these properties on this back property line right here. So presently that setback would be 25 feet. The proposed text amendment would take that down to 15 feet for the building itself, and then if there's any canopies, for example, for a drive-through lane, then that can go right up to the property line and have a 0 setback. But then at the same time, understanding that on the other side of that property line, there probably won't be a building. So I showed you a red line there that was 50 feet out from that property line on the other side. And so then that would be the other part of what's being recommended is 50 feet along the other side of that line for those properties that are behind the ones fronting on the service road. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this at their meeting, at their previous meeting. They forwarded their recommendation for approval.
Council, any questions for Mr. Reinhardt? This does require a public hearing, so we'll open up to anyone in the audience that has any questions regarding this specific agenda item. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and move to the next agenda item. Next item on the agenda, hold a public hearing, first reading, and deliberate on proposed ordinance amending chapter 13 Utilities, Article 13.200, Rates and Charges, Section 13.207, Rate Schedule for Water Usage, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, containing a severability clause, and providing for publication and effective date. Ms. Henderson?
Mayor and council, everyone is familiar with the water rate increase that we approved back in May. And I know the council is familiar that, shortly after that increase going into effect, we received notice from our water supplier, Rural Water Supply District, that our cost to them for the water that we buy, that we then sell to citizens, was going up by $1 million for this fiscal year that we are in, beginning October 1st. The rate increase that we did in May did not include that money. We, had not been given that assessment, and we had not been given reason to expect it. So our rate increase in May did not include enough money to cover that. So basically, for every month that we don't increase water rates proportionately, we are losing money to the tune of $1 million a year. So if we adopt an increase now, or it wouldn't be now anyway, it has to have 2 readings before it goes into effect. So if we, at the second meeting in November, adopt an increase, that would go into effect in December, that would hit customers on their bills in January, we would already be in the hole $250,000. For us to increase water rates enough to not be negative after that year, given that we're already 3 months in the hole, we would have to go up by something like another 24%. Staff just can't recommend that. We think that the increase that we already did has hit. We've run numbers, started at 10%. What can we make work at 10%? And there's just 15% is staff's recommendation for the best way to balance between no more than we absolutely can get away with doing. It means we're gonna have to put off some of the things that we talked about doing that we need to do to lower water loss and lower our cost and make the service more reliable. We can't do both. If we could do both, we wouldn't have raised rates the last time. So, this is a recommendation that nobody is happy with. Certainly I am not. But I cannot think of a better way forward than to try to split the thing between reducing costs somewhat to get over this initial hump, and then do an increase of 15%.
Council, any questions? Ms. Henderson? Megan, help me clarify, was this strictly the cost of our water, or is this the potential upgrades that they were going to make to the lines?
Right, so the way this hits us is in the cost that we pay Aquila for the water that we buy. And they, every year, sometime in the summer, they give us a letter that tells us what our annual requirement would be, and that requirement is what we're required to pay for the water that we get. That requirement went up by $1 million. Why it went up? A tiny fraction of that is that our actual usage went up. But the majority of it is they want to go up so that they can start to spend money on these improvements that they're planning. And their estimate is that ultimately, when they do all of the improvements and they get everything financed and there's debt service involved, that's going to hit us more along the lines of $2 million a year. But they've gone ahead and charged us $1 million a year because in the meantime, they want to start self-funding some of those improvements. So essentially, they're proposing to build something like $55 million in improvements to their system, which will impact us, which will make our water, supply better, and as well as their other customers. At some point, theoretically, they're gonna get a loan for that $55 million, and then they're gonna have to make payments on that loan. So what we knew, and what we expected, like in a year or so, is that they would get that loan, and that first payment would be due, and our share would be something like $2 million. What we didn't expect is that before they do that, before they get that loan, they're already going up by $1 million so that they can start chipping away at that work, which ultimately should reduce the amount that they have to get the loan for. So they're not gonna wait and get the loan and start the whole thing. They're gonna do, kind of small stuff in between. So that's what we've been given to understand, and that's their approach. And it just,
Council?
Maybe for the benefit of those of us who may not know, could you expand on what a severability clause is?
I'm sorry? Oh, the severability clause. So the severability clause allows you to sever or cut out pieces of an ordinance from other pieces. And so the severability clause says, hey, if there's any piece of this that either now or some other time is found to be illegal or in conflict with state law, if there's some piece of this that for some other reason doesn't work, that piece can be severed from the rest of the ordinance, and the rest of the ordinance remains in effect.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Maybe we will be charged that extra $1 million. The 24% rate to cover that will not be passed on to the citizens, it will only be 15%.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be a 9% deficit. How do we do that?
Well, that's hard to answer, sir. We proposed to add 3 new positions and a backhoe and a truck, because the number one thing that we've got to be able to do is replace these ancient leaking water lines. That's gonna do 2 things for us. It's gonna reduce our water loss, which is gonna lower the expenses of our system, because money is going down the drain whenever water's running in the street. But it's also gonna improve reliability and quality for our customers, because every time we have a water leak, if it's in the right place, it puts half of the city out of water, and it takes the tower down, and then every citizen and business that's on that system, on that part of the system, has to boil water until we get tests back proving that that water is okay. Those disruptions are costing people money. They're not, I know that for residents it feels like there's a danger to public health. So far, there's not been any evidence that there is a danger to public health. When we get the tests back, they always come back clean. But it still creates a feeling of uncertainty and concern about the quality of the water. And so for that reason, the leaks are a problem. They're costing us money. They're hurting our residents. And also these, the oldest of the water lines, the cast iron pipes, make the water rusty looking, which also freaks people out. And there was a recent news article, and you can say all day long, iron isn't gonna hurt you, it's in your multivitamin, but it's not cute, and it's not fun if you're doing laundry. It's not fun, it stains the appliances. If we could replace all of the cast iron lines in the system, that would help everybody. So, I'm sorry, I'm so long-winded. The immediate thing, so someday we need to do a big $50 million project, but in the short term, we didn't want to raise rates any more than we absolutely had to. The thing that we knew we could do right away is hire some people and start replacing the daggum water lines. We can't do that now. We can't do it now. We're gonna have to push it back. To do that, we would have to increase more. That is the thing that we can control. It's in our hand. We can just push it back. We can push back that equipment. We can push back those positions.
public hearing, so I'll open up to anyone in the audience that would like to address the agenda item number 13. Yes, ma'am?
I'm new here, and I'm just kind of curious, is there no other source we can get water from that might have a better, a much more deal for us? Or is Aquila the only, I'm just curious.
So, all of Hillsborough's water comes from Lake Aquila. Every city anywhere around us, is pressed for water. In our area, the aquifers are not great. You know, in East Texas, groundwater is plentiful. You just stick a well down in the ground and get what you need. In our area, the groundwater is just not great. It's deep down, it's kind of nasty, and it's not particularly plentiful. And so the concern that Hillsborough had long ago was, at some point, those wells aren't going to produce. So Hillsborough went to Washington and over the course of 20, 30 years, got Lake Aquila built to meet our water needs. The Aquila Water Supply District Board, every one of those people live in Hillsborough. It's not a for-profit entity. It is just like the city, meaning they are us, like us and their other customers, because it's not just the city of Hillsborough, it's the other little water supply corporations around us. We're the only people who benefit from it, and what we pay is all the money that they have. There's no shareholders that, like, if they charge us more than it really costs, there's nobody taking money out, that it is what it is. So, no, they are our only viable source of water. Yeah, I mean, that's a big question.
Anyone else have any questions regarding, yes, sir?
One of the main reasons I'm here for the water problem, right? I don't mean if I have to pay a little bit more, but we got this problem, they clean the service a lot of times during the month, and you still charge us for that water.
Yes.
So if I see we have 2 days without water, but I see my water bill come $20, $25 less, I'm needing, you know? But if you're gonna increase that, the other big deal, nobody says something about we're gonna have a shoot down in the water. Could you have to go and sign in on some website? When the better way you can leave a note on the mailbox, leave a flyer somewhere else, and somebody gonna see it. But if you have to go and sign in to get the notification, they're gonna take you a long time. Sometimes people work, I work 12 hours a day. I have to drive 2 hours every day to get to work. I don't got time to be signing in, and when I get home, I don't got water, and I have to take a shower.
So thank you for sharing those concerns. All of that makes sense. Let me explain how it works. You sign in one time to get the notifications, and then you get them every time forever after that. You don't ever have to sign in again. And then that way, if it happens in the middle of the night, if it happens on a weekend, because we don't know, we don't have people who can go and put a door hang on everybody's door. I mean, we would have to raise rates to pay for enough people to do that. And in order to charge, so if I understood you correctly, you're saying, look, you charged me for a month of water service, but 3 days last month I didn't have water. I should pay less because of those days that I didn't have water. That makes sense. The problem is, there's nobody else to pay for that. There's not another, like if it's McDonald's, right? McDonald's has money. We don't have money. If you don't give us the money, we don't have the money, right? Like there's nobody sitting somewhere with money to give you $25 back. All of the money that we charge you to provide the service is what it costs. There is no extra. There is no extra. We lost $2.4 million last year in the water fund because these rates haven't gone up materially in 25 years. We not only do we not have any extra money? We have less than zero. And it's because if you know, and so that's the thing, we're not charging what we think it's worth. We're not like checking what everybody else charges and like going, well, ours is special goods, so we charge a little more, or maybe ours is, you know, sometimes it's orange, so we charge a little less. It only is based on what it costs. So what it costs us to provide the service, even with down days, that's still what it costs us. It doesn't cost us less when the water is out, it costs us more. We've got people out, we've got equipment out.
I got another point right there. You say they're gonna do nothing on the last 20-some years to the water lines or whatever. You have a people working for the city, right? They have to be in maintenance, because it's part of his job, be in maintenance. So why they gonna get the maintenance for the last 20-some years?
So, that's a great question. The question is, so the rates, I didn't say people haven't been doing stuff to the system for 20 years. I said we haven't gone up on the rates material. The charges haven't materially gone up. People have said, so what were they doing all this time? Were we not replacing water lines? And the answer is mostly no, we were not replacing water lines. I can't speak to that super well because I wasn't here. What I can speculate is a few things. I think over time, we dropped the number of employees that we had because we were reluctant to raise those water rates. So, you know, the positions are hard to fill, and you know, we let the salaries get low, and then it's not competitive. People don't want to work for us because the salaries are not competitive. And so then you have more people leave, and we don't replace those positions. Oh, look, we're saving money. And over time, instead of doing, you know, I'm gonna just compare us to Encore. I'm gonna compare us to Encore because they're a for-profit business, and they're gonna make sure their people make money, right? They don't hesitate. They raise rates on us a couple times a year. And they make sure that their people are paid competitively, and they do the system maintenance required, more or less, to keep it, because they're not worried about whether people like the rates or not. We are so worried about whether people are gonna like the rates, whether it's gonna upset them, or whether it's gonna hurt them, because we care about our citizens, that we would rather have the quality of the system get worse and worse and worse and worse to keep those rates low. That's what we did. And at the same time, those lines are just getting older, they're getting crumblier, the service, the number of leaks, let's say we had 15 people 20 years ago, and we've got 12 people today, and then somewhere in between, we probably had 7, 8. But 20 years ago, we may have had 100 leaks a year, and now we have 200 because our system is 20 years older.
Are you guys doing those jobs in-house, or are you guys contracting those jobs out?
It is far more cost-effective to do them in-house. We are contracting out what we have to. Every once in a while, there's something that's beyond our ability to do it well. Or, for example, we're doing like the street and infrastructure project where we've got Old Brandon Road, Park Drive, Walnut, and Church Street all under construction basically at once.
That's all the city's doing that?
No. We contracted that. We haven't done.
But does that come from the same money as the water?
Not exactly. Yes, but no. Basically we go get a loan, and then we have payments on that loan. So that's what's happening with that project that's already underway. And over time, as we've had fewer and fewer people, and more leaks, like the percentage of time that somebody could have spent doing preventive maintenance and proactive maintenance, now we're just leak repair. We are just reactive all the time with everybody we've got. And it's gotten to the point where a leak might not even get fixed for a week or two. If it's a little one and we've got a big one in front of it in line, and then there's another big one, that little leak may,
So is that something if that was to happen, would you guys stop that leak? Or would you guys continue to let that water run?
And that's the thing, like we have gotten, over time, we have gotten in a situation where we're just so used to having a few leaks here and a few leaks there, but there are usually a couple little leaks running all the time because there's a bigger something, there's something that's more on fire somewhere else. And that's part of the shift that has to change. It has to be like a no drop left behind policy where even if it's little, we
Can't afford to lose it.
we can't afford to lose it. We have to be obsessive about
I was
this.
just curious, because the other day we were out there and there was quite a bit of water running right over the border, and they were just sitting there, and I was like, what's going on?
Over here?
Yeah.
Because they were working on a project, and they were waiting on, they had they were putting in, they were doing utility work, they had put in some valves, and they were having trouble getting that valve to properly close. So it was deliberate, and that's part of it. Not every time you see some water running down the street is it a leak.
Right, for sure.
Sometimes we're flushing hydrants.
Yeah, I could tell they turned it on, but it
Yeah.
just was like, he had a shot back in the hole, I was like, I don't think that's enough. That's a lot of water, right?
Yeah. These are great questions. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's actually my first time here too.
Yes,
But,
sir.
I grew up on that side of the railroad track, and I can tell you that I've probably seen more leaks on that side of the tracks than on this side. And I tell you what, the things that I do here, I don't know how long you've been city manager. That's
3.5 years.
3.5 years. Okay. Out of those 3.5 years, I can't tell the difference in between how faster these leaks have gotten fixed and how slower they get fixed. But I tell you what, there's been some leaks that I've seen that doesn't get fixed probably 3 months later.
Yeah.
And that is, we still pay for that.
Yeah.
We have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like my partner here next to me said that he doesn't mind if you pay $25 extra. It's not so much of it, but it is. But at the same time, what can we do to fix these lines? These lines could have been fixed with that idea that there's polypipe out there, what they call it. There's cities that are actually changing their lines up to polypipe. And that would be a big help, I can say that. But there's been a leak around my area that it actually made a deep pothole where this driver was driving through at the time it collapsed. I mean, it could have just been her whole vehicle.
Yeah.
I mean, she actually, she was in there with her one side of the wheel, and she couldn't get out of it. We had to help her out of it. And now that, and it's only being refilled by something that's being washed away.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, that when money's being washed away.
Yes.
I see that happening. I see no change in it. That's what I have to say so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, something's got to change. I know y'all just raised the water usage, and now they're going to do it again. You're talking about doing it again. Now I get it where our water comes from. I get it that our foot is the same. But what can we do to change these lines? These lines have to be changed. If not, if they do, is what can we do? Are these rates going to drop again? Or I mean, I doubt it.
Frankly, I doubt it too, but that's what would happen if we were able to lower costs enough. And we have applied for $30 million from the Texas Water Development Board. It's a loan program, but we've applied for a program that is 70% forgiving. So if we got, and it's not impossible that we get the whole $30 million, 70% of that would be forgiven, and we would only be on the hook for $9 million. Now, $9 million is a lot, but you factor it in over time, what would our debt service be? It would be less than we're doing right now to deal with the Quills issues. And we would have $30 million worth of work done. So to put this in perspective, 44% of our system is cast iron or asbestos cement water lines. That means that they are an average of probably 70, 80 years old. It would cost something like $55 million to replace all of that. $30 million is what it would cost to replace all of it that's in residential areas. And that's all over town. This is not about neighborhoods, this is about pipe materials.
That's a lot of argument.
Well, and
So that the landscape, when it rains, it pours. And I mean, that whole side of the town, it's a river.
well, and
It's
that's,
a river.
and that's a drainage issue. That's a whole separate.
I understand, but we got this asphalt washing away.
Do we send our stormwater back to Lake Aquila?
If it gets to the creeks, then yes. Okay, I feel like some of this we're gonna actually, if y'all stick around, we're gonna touch on some
there's no more questions, we'll close the public hearing. Move on to the next agenda item. Hold a public hearing, first reading, and deliberate on an ordinance authorizing exemption from the ad valorem taxation of real property for the purpose of operating a child care facility.
Mayor and Council, Senate Bill 1145 was approved last session by the legislature and added to the Texas Tax Code. And it allows jurisdictions to offer a tax exemption, full or partial, from property taxes for licensed child care providers. Our strategic plan prioritizes ensuring responsible, equitable growth, boosting economic development, enhancing quality of life. In order for us to do these things well, we've got to have enough childcare. We know it's a shortage in town already, and that affordability is an issue. If we can do something for childcare providers that makes it more likely for them to be able to operate here and to do so at affordable rates for our citizens, that seems like a good idea to us. So staff would recommend that council consider authorizing an exemption at an amount if you're choosing. It needs to be at least 50%, so it could be 50% all the way up to 100%, whatever you offer.
Council, any questions for Megan regarding the exemption?
Would this be for daycare providers that own their own building, or those that are triple net leases?
It would apply to any childcare facility, and if it applies to a facility that the daycare rents, then they are required to take, in order to get the exemption, the property owner has to take an affidavit to the tax office showing that they are passing through that savings to the childcare provider.
And that would be for business, personal property, as well as real estate?
Real estate only.
Okay. And do we know how many properties at present this would affect? Three?
But I think that the answer is no, ma'am, we do not.
Okay.
Council, any more questions? This does require a public hearing. We'll open it up to anyone in the audience that would like to address this specific agenda item.
It does require that the childcare centers are licensed for subsidized care. So they have to accept subsidized care, which they now change their licensing. You have to be TRS certified and accept the subsidized.
Well, when you're talking about child care on the facility, right? But if you really worry about the chills around the town, if you're going down there, we don't got any sidewalk for the chills. Whenever they go into the store or walk around, they don't have any sidewalk. Why you don't worry about whenever kids going out to school or they playing around, we don't have sidewalks. So if you really worry about the kids, they should go on 4 days to the school.
This isn't something where the city would provide childcare. This is something where the city would offer a property tax break to businesses that provide childcare. So this is not a program that the city would do, it's not money that the city would spend. It's just giving a tax break to businesses that provide childcare so that that childcare can be offered more affordably.
Why don't give us a tax break to the people like me? I'm a normal guy, I have to pay my taxes, they're gonna double from the last year to this year, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna be the double probably this year. Why you don't give us a tax break over there? But we are people paying our taxes, but we don't see any change around the community. All the work for you.
I'm stuck on this particular agenda item right now. Give me a minute.
Okay, anyone else in the audience that would like to address this specific agenda item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on to the city manager report.
Okay, so So we have 8 goals in our strategic plan. These are 8 things that after we got a bunch of public input, the council approved that said they're gonna move us forward. And the first meeting of every month, I talk about the first 4 goals. The second meeting every month, I talk about the second 4 goals. So the first 4 goals, number 1 is responsible, equitable growth. We have quite a bit of growth expected in the city. We have about 3,000 single-family houses right now. We are expecting at least 1,500 or so. That would be an increase of something like 50% over probably the next 5 to 10 years. And we are currently working with the first of those developments that's going to bring, just in phase 1, 156 units. So the phase 1 of this development will be the largest single-family development in Hillsboro's history. So this growth is coming. The second part of that growth is having enough water. All our water comes from Lake Ecola. If we continue to grow, we're going to bump into as much water as we have. So we need to raise the level of the lake. We've worked with our partners at Ecola and Brazos River Authority. There's been an act of Congress passed that includes language to allow us to raise the level of the lake. The next step is a study. There's no new movement on this since last month. Fostering transparency and connection. It is really important to us to explain what the heck we're up to with people's tax dollars. We had 2 public meetings this month, last month to report on progress with the strategic plan. More on that in a minute. And then in general, we're getting input from our communications committees, both at the staff and citizen levels, and we're trying to keep up with stuff. So, Assistant City Manager Tony King will talk in a second about promoting beautification and historic preservation. But let me hit deliver efficient, effective government, because I think that's kind of where we have some concern. Y'all need to know that a server crashed and we lost like most of our stuff. That was a pretty disruptive. We lost a ton of information, the backups were corrupted, it looked for a while like we weren't going to get very much of it back. The good news is quite a bit of it is back. Dale in particular has lost a bunch of stuff and is having to reconstruct it. That's been a big hit to operations in the last month. Allison Platt, our special projects coordinator, has spent the last several months putting together a report. She's interviewed people from different departments and has compiled information to show how we're doing in implementing these strategic goals. We had 2 town hall meetings set. We put that in the water bill insert, which goes out like 6 weeks before, and then the server crashed, and all Allison's material was not there. So we did not super extra publish these meetings, but they had been in the newsletter, they were in the reporter, so we did have them. And Allison did the best she could to reconstitute everything. Councilmember Jolly was in attendance. I think we still were able to have a productive conversation, but we will be having a redo now that all of the stuff is mostly back later this month or the first part of December. And the point of that is we had a ton of public input that went into the creation of this plan, and that included things like move the needle on infrastructure. We need to be measuring whether we're doing it. I mean, there are folks out there who are saying we don't see a difference. So it's not enough for us to know what we're doing. We have to measure if it's having an impact. On the comprehensive plan, and we don't have time to go into the difference, but we have applied for $300,000 to do the comprehensive plan, and we have a request for proposal going out Thursday of this week for consultants. That will, of course, be contingent on funding. So we'll go ahead and go through the process of trying to get somebody on board contingent on funding, and then if and when we get that money, they will start work on the comprehensive plan, which is going to tell us where the water lines and sewer lines and streets need to be and how big to deal with this growth that we know is coming. CFO to go, water loss audit, S&P evaluation. These are all conversations that we've had in the last couple of weeks our system, specifically our water system, to determine if we are functional. The Texas Water Development Board CFO to Go program is a thing that it's like free consulting that they offer to cities that have loans with them. We really want to show them that we're excited about doing a great job with financial management because we have asked them for $30 million. So we're participating in this program. They've asked for a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of work, but it's gonna help us be better. The water loss audit, we, you know, on paper, we lose something like 40% of our water. It is more nuanced and detailed than that, and going through all of that with the analysts from Texas Water Development Board, there's a ton of places where we are spending water and not counting it. And so that looks like water loss, it looks like waste. It's not all waste. Some of it is purposeful, but it needs to be accounted for and measured. So figuring that out is a big part of that. And then we've been in the process of being evaluated by Standard & Poor's because Aquila needs to be rated by them in order to issue the debt for their big project. So since we're their biggest customer, Standard & Poor's doesn't know that Aquila is sound if they don't know that we are sound. So we're answering tough questions from them as well. That's been a lot. The biggest pieces, and I'll hit streets just a little bit. With streets and water both, in order to get materially better, we have to both pay and have it do it ourselves and have contractors come and do stuff. We don't have enough money to have contractors do everything. The project that we talked about, Old Brandon Road, Walnut Park, and Church, is $6 million.
Force the better workers.
Pardon?
Force the better workers.
Well, so
Something's going on over there.
So we've got to have those big projects where we bring in big outside companies that have bigger equipment than we have and all that kind of stuff. But we've also got to have our people doing the smaller stuff constantly. That's where we haven't been doing it over the years. We haven't been building the streets. We haven't been replacing water lines. We've been chasing potholes and leaks. We've been doing reactive maintenance and not proactive maintenance. So we have the manpower and the equipment to rebuild streets, but we have not been rebuilding blocks of streets. You know, we had a goal of doing so many last year and we could not get them done. And so we are in the process of, you know, sitting down and running back through and something's got to give. We've got to be able to go back to the community and say, this is how many blocks we're going to do, and we need to do close to that many blocks. With water, we've got to be able to go back to the community and say, this is how much more money we've brought in because of that rate increase, and here's how we've spent every bit of it. So the first bit, as you know, was spent to install receivers on the water towers. Those receivers are all installed. The guys from Neptune were in the utility billing office today training the utility billing staff on reading that stuff. And these are receivers that are going to read those water meters constantly. The reason that that matters is because if there's water running out on the ground, it's better for us if it's on your side of the meter because then you have to pay for it. But ultimately, it isn't good for anyone. And so if we can figure out that there's a leak at your house before you know it and before a month later when you get your water bill, we save you money and we save the city water. So by having those receivers, it is going to take care of our customers. It's going to keep them from having high bills if they have a leak. It's going to protect them from having that extra cost at this higher rate. So that was the first thing that we did with the money. The second thing was supposed to be hiring this additional crew to go and replace water lines all the time. Obviously, we're having to push that back now because of that cost increase. After water is sewer, and it's basically, you know, we did streets first because that was the thing that people were maddest about. You can't tell the difference yet, but you will. Water, so is in process, and I would say the process isn't working well, but we know what it needs to be, and it's a matter of tweaking and improving until we deliver it. Water, we're just getting started. So we've got contract work happening. We've applied for $30 million in loans that would do a huge amount of contracted stuff. We'll have our own crew in a few months. We're pushing it back, but we'll have our own crew in a few months. So that that kind of twin process of contracted work and self-performed work, both happening at the same time, will be in place for water by the time we're done with this fiscal year. The next thing to figure out is sewer. So we've hired an engineering firm, they're making recommendations now. We don't have a plan in place like we do for water or streets, but we will soon. And then once we know what is needed to improve the reliability of the wastewater system, and the reason that we're going in this order, water outage affects everybody, but we've had essentially wastewater outages. You know, we've had places where after a heavy rain, the lines have been inundated and people's service has been interrupted and it's not been usable. That's not acceptable. We've got to figure that out. So that's next. After that, and only after that, are we going to be able to do a similar system-wide look at drainage? We just can't do it all at the same time. We have to try to get one piece and one piece and one piece. And so that's why we're not looking at drainage yet, but what we did do is get together with engineers, identify what that's going to look like, and we had it added to the state water plan. The reason that that's significant is because if your drainage project is included in the state water plan, then next year we'll be eligible to apply for funding to get that plan done, and the year after that we'll be eligible to apply for funding to do projects. Now, when we're talking drainage improvements, we're talking about stuff that's going to be very expensive and affect, blocks of area at a time. It's going to be millions of dollars. We don't know where that's going to come from, but we're putting processes in place now to make sure that we can use outside funds for as much of that work as possible. Okay, that's it for me. Staff activity and events, you can see that we did a couple of different things for Halloween. On the 26th, there were the events that Jessica talked about. On the 31st, Parks and Rec and Public Safety worked together to have candy so that kids could, on the actual day. We are recruiting for open positions right now, so that is me, and I'll take any questions before kicking it over to Tony for preservation and beautification.
You have a meeting holding on Friday?
Yes, we have a meeting on Friday with all of the contractors involved in the street and infrastructure project. So we will get an update on Old Brandon Road, the Park and Ivy intersection, Walnut, I think mostly down on Walnut, and then Church Street, which is still a mess.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Update of Goal 3. We've had some citizens contact us about their concerns about people parking the wrong way. And to address that and people parking in the front yard, we had our recruits that are in the police academy last week go out and address those issues. They issued out 68, they saw 68 violations, issued 68 warnings for those violations. Update on Knoxville, Deputy Fire Marshal Carey still continue to write citations to the owner for tall grass and substandard buildings. Amigos, no news on that. And Motel 81, they complete their parking lot, now they're working on getting power to the building. Any questions? Yes, one more. Buildings and Standards Board meeting. It's going to be November 17th at 6 p.m. We will be presenting 5 properties. These properties have been before the board before, so we're just following up and giving them an update on those properties. Hillsborough operation, welcome that. You've already been briefed on that. Just want to say that's a great group of people. Want to thank Natasha Sawyer for keeping that going. They're really working hard to get Christmas decorations ready to go for lighting the Christmas tree at the courthouse. And regarding cleanup curbs, staff is sending out letters for people who are in violation of not doing that. So we've been getting responses back from those letters as well. I think that's it.
Got some questions from Mr. Kay? Next time. Next item on the agenda is to hold a closed session under the provisions of section 551.087 of the government code in regards to economic development. Show the council going into closed session 7:08. Okay, show the council back in open session 7:30. Council, any questions or action that needs to be taken? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.